Welcome back to the Get Mental podcast. My name is Dave. I am honored to have the pleasure to introduce Corinn Brewer, who is actually one of our ambassadors for our Focus 5 app and our sports psychology company, Hearts and Minds. Corinn, where does this podcast find you?
Hi, everybody. I am the U20 American record holder in the women's decathlon, and I'm going into my senior year at Lehigh University. I'm on the track and field team. I'm studying architecture, and I have a world championship coming up next week. So I'm very excited for that. And I'm excited for the opportunity to chat with you all.
We're super stoked that you just got out of practice. I think we were talking before this, running a couple 200s and really just gearing up to go to Spire, I think, right, at the end of this week?
Yep. Yes, very
Nice.
excited.
Oh, we're excited to see how it goes. Corinn Brewer, it's kind of filled you in a little bit of her background, but I just have to brag about you a little bit. Corinn is a 13-time All-American, 13 times. I mean, can you believe that? The 1,500 meter national champion and 800 meter runner-up, the 2,000 steeplechase, which is an insane race, by the way. I used to run track and field, and that race always caught my attention. Second place at the 3,000, U20 All-American record holder for the women's decathlon championship. I mean, I can't, the list goes on and on at Lehigh University. So we're really excited to see you and kind of have you here today. Full disclosure, I was meeting with Corinn as her mental coach for a while, and I was just really struck by her fortitude or mental fortitude. So I think to just launch this podcast off, one of the questions that I have is, what are the 3 mental skills that you think that are most important for you as an athlete as you, I guess, approach your sport, and where you found to be the most mentally tough?
Yeah, I would say the first one would be journaling. I like to do journaling at night or before a meet just to get my head in that mindset of what I'm going to do out on the track in the field. Basically journaling like my progress from the beginning of the season to now and any important cues or techniques, just to really get my head ready to compete and get in that headspace. And then the second one would be self-talk, similar to journaling, but just rehearsing in my head what I want to do is really going to allow for me to put my training into practice at competition, as well as any positive talk is really going to allow for my confidence to shoot up and any fear or anxiety that I have to go down. And then the last one would be visualization, going off of self-talk, just really visualizing what I've done in practice and training and how I want to put that into practice at competition. So really just envisioning everything that I want to go and have that happen. Because I think that's very important. And without that preparation for competition might just be like a shot in the dark if you're not preparing yourself properly.
Yeah, I love that. So visualization, self-talk, and really journaling is kind of like these kind of core elements of how you prepare mentally for the competition. I just want to go back because I know that negative self-talk and positive self-talk are like a really big thing with collegiate athletes, as well as just high school athletes in general. What tips do you have on self-talk? Like, is this something that you struggled with in the past previously? I know that I have, and maybe some athletes out there kind of can't help but be a little bit negative. What was your journey with self-talk or even visualization or journaling? Like, when did that really dawn on you as like a really important skill to learn?
Yeah, I would say growing up, I really struggled with fear and anxiety, especially related to competing. So like competition fear and anxiety. And that really hindered my performance throughout high school and in the beginning of college. And so I really knew that something was going to need to change if I wanted to allow for my training to show itself fully in competition, because I knew that this fear was really holding me back. So my junior year of college, I got into visualization, self-talk, and journaling and being more really aware of that and active in doing that. And I think when I was able to shift my mindset from fear and this cycle that grips you when you're fearful and full of anxiety, doing visualization and self-talk and journaling really got me out of that cycle. So I think that was the important turning point my junior year of college. And that allowed for me to turn this fear into confidence and realize that the fear that I was experiencing was a lie, and it was coming from an inner voice that wasn't true. And I needed to be able to get out of that. And I was only able to do that if I cognizantly was like trying to get out of that. And so I did that through self-talk and visualization and journaling.
That's awesome. I love that. Was there anything particular going on in your junior year? Or was this kind of a buildup? I mean, I know that you said you had some anxiety, and was that? And I just have to ask, was that like systemic? Was it just in athletics, or do you think that it was like pervasive in other areas of your life as well? And I guess when did it dawn on you? And I guess what was so important about your junior year? Was it just kind of a
Yeah.
buildup, or what was going on?
I would say that actually my head coach in track and field, she said to me, she said like she was noticing. So it wasn't just me internally. This was people outside were seeing this fear and anxiety. And so my um, head coach mentioned to me, and she said, your mental training is going to be harder than your physical training to get me where I needed to be to compete to in my fullest ability. And so that really dawned on me that other people are noticing this. And it's no longer just internal, but it's external as well. So that's where I was like, okay, I need to do something about this. So that was sort of that turning point, and that was my indoor season. So sort of the beginning of the year, and then I had the indoor season and the outdoor season to really work on my mental fitness. And I would say I just had a lot of like pressure put on me growing up to perform um, it to the best that I could. And whenever I didn't, I would say there weren't positive reactions to that. And I would say that sort of built up this fear that my identity was rooted in me as an athlete and my performance rather than my identity as a child of God. And I would say that's where this fear came, because I didn't want to disappoint people. I didn't want negative reactions. I wanted to be known as, a successful athlete. And so when I had these poor performances, and I knew what the repercussions were, that already stemmed this fear in me before I even had my performance. And so that led throughout high school and college. And I wasn't able to break free from that until my coach talked to me about it, because I wasn't smart enough to do something about it on my own. So I needed, an external force to sort of push me a little bit. Yeah, but that's how I started my mental fitness journey.
Yeah, yeah. So just uh, understanding that sometimes it kind of takes this outside perspective to whether it be a coach, a mentor, even parents to just kind of say, or maybe it's just yourself, right? Kind of taking a look in the mirror and understanding that, maybe I do need some help in some ways, but what seems normal to a lot of people, and I know that you're a very driven person. I mean, just even like reading off the accolades, to even reach that level of performance, like, yes, you have to be gifted. Yeah, you had to be talented physically, mentally as well. But I think the mental side for you and just knowing you, and I know that the people listening may not know this, but you're a very driven person, like extremely motivated, very determined to get to where you want to go. And a lot of the times, I think that what you're kind of articulating there is you're putting so much pressure on yourself and also external pressure, like you said, maybe from early childhood, whether it be coaches or otherwise, that kind of forced your thoughts into, hey, I have to perform well. I have to go out there and do well. And like you said, you almost shot yourself in the foot, so to speak, before you even did long jump or pole vault or what have you, is this kind of buildup of oh, I have to do well. And if I don't hit this mark, then, then what? And kind of wrapping up your identity in that.
Yeah.
And that's a really difficult place to be at times. But it's awesome that your coach was able to observe that in you and then just kind of illuminate that. I just love that quote. What was it again? That your mental performance journey is going to be harder than any physical practice that you've had to
Yeah.
endure.
Yeah, my mental training will be tougher than my physical training.
Wow. Why is that? And did that come true? Is it?
I would say I don't know if it was more difficult, but I definitely put in um, as much or more work mentally than physically. I don't know if it was necessarily more difficult, but the time and the effort put in was definitely at least equal. Um, and I think she knew what I was capable of, and she had the confidence in me physically. She knew I can train hard and do what I needed to do. to get my fitness up, my physical fitness. But she knew that I struggled mentally in that side of things. So I think that's just she hadn't seen that growth in me yet, whereas she has had physically. So I think that's why she thought that mental side of things was going to be a little tougher.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And just to go back for context, you're saying that like maybe in early childhood, and even in early adulthood, you put a lot of pressure on yourself. What did that look like? What were some of the expectations? I think you grew up in Pennsylvania. I guess just kind of talk to me a little bit about your background and sports journey to get to where you are today.
Yeah. So growing up, since I was little, like 2 years old, I was a gymnast, and I was a gymnast all the way up until I left for college, and I still go back and practice from time to time. But also, I started track and field and cross country when I was 5 years old, and my parents did track and field in high school and college, so they were mine and my brother's track coaches growing up, since we were little up until we graduated from high school. And I started doing all of the events along with my brothers, and we sort of stuck with all of the events going through high school. Um, and I excelled at the distance events because I was like very skinny, and like little, so it was easy for me to run far and fast. So I excelled at those growing up, broke a lot of records, and so the attention then was sort of put on me to perform well and continue performing well because that's what I was known as. And as I continued to get older, my body was changing, and I was no longer um, as good at the distance events compared to the other people my age than I was when I was younger. And so that's sort of where this pressure buildup became like evident because I was no longer winning so easily. Um, but I continued to train distance as well as was still like pole vaulting and doing the long jump and things like that and high jump. But I sort of took those more seriously now that my body was a little stronger and had more muscle to it. So then I really focused on the heptathlon and pole vault and getting recruited to college. I had the option. Some colleges were recruiting me for distance and some colleges were recruiting me for heptathlon and pole vault. So I had to choose which route I wanted to go, and I chose the heptathlon and pole vault route. Um, I'm happy that I chose that. I think it's serving me well for what I'm doing right now, with like the women's decathlon and stuff like that. But that's sort of my journey. So a little bit of everything, and gymnastics definitely helped me with like power and strength and body awareness in events like pole vault, especially. Um, but yeah, that's mainly it. So my whole family is a track family, and we really love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. But even growing up in that environment, I could tell that it's not to say that you're a prodigy, so to speak, but like to understand that like if mom, dad, child, we're both athletes, like there's a little bit of pressure there to kind of perform your best.
Right.
And I know that like even coming up throughout childhood and early adulthood, it can be challenging. But at the same time, just knowing that like you also loved it, and gymnastics is also such a tough sport too, but a lot of that translating onto the track, onto the field can be very, very, very advantageous for, like you said, body awareness, proprioception, all that stuff, especially when you're up in the air in a pole vault. I mean, oh my gosh, I can only imagine being up
Right.
there. What was your highest pole vault, by the way?
3.8 meters, which is around 12 feet 6 inches.
12 feet 6 inches. Yeah, no, I don't think I could do that up on a pole, but that is amazing. That's insane. So I think that you went to, I think Notre Dame. Was that your first college that you went to? And then I think you later transferred to Lehigh. And I want you to talk a little bit about what was your experience with the recruiting process, and then ultimately your decision to leave Notre Dame. How was that? How did that come about? And are there any tips or learnings that kind of came from that for you that other people could maybe benefit from?
Yeah. So, getting recruited to Notre Dame, I was getting recruited for pole vault mainly, and then my coach was also gave me the option to do the heptathlon as well as pole vault, once I arrived on Notre Dame's campus. And when I like Notre Dame was my dream school since I was a little girl, so it was a dream to get recruited there and to run there. But when I got there, I was also studying architecture, and I was the only athlete on the entire Notre Dame campus that was studying architecture. It just wasn't really um, seen as a positive thing by the coaches just because of the time commitment. And so when I got to Notre Dame, my coach really just wanted me to stick to the pole vault because he thought my mind wouldn't be able to focus on pole vault architecture and the heptathlon. He just thought it would be too much. So he thought he would get the most out of me, and I would get the most out of it if I just stuck to pole vault and studying architecture. But I wasn't really happy just pole vaulting. I really missed the multi events, and I just really thought that that's what I should be doing throughout college. And um, it was a really tough decision to leave Notre Dame, but I learned a lot from it. And I think it was a very valuable experience because one of the main things I learned was to not settle because it's very easy to just be like, okay, I'm in college, I'm at a D1 university, I'm just going to stay here, even though I'm not happy and it might not be the best thing for me. I feel like that's very easy to do. But I learned that I'm the only one that's living my life. And if I'm not happy, I should probably not stay where I'm at. So that was one thing. Another thing was to not let other people's opinions affect me because, like I said earlier, it's my life that I'm living and not theirs. And so other people are going to have their opinions. Like my track coach at Notre Dame wanted me to stay. And my parents didn't really say either way, but I feel like I knew what they wanted. But just to really put their opinions aside and just really think deeply of what I wanted um, was very important. And to be confident enough to, just take that step of entering the transfer portal and seeing where things go. And then also, I was really able to understand how to make a decision and how to base things on like importance and not just make a decision based on like something that pops up into my head, but really think through it. And a lot of that for me was my faith and just prayer and making that decision through with God's help through prayer. And that was very important. So I think those three main things were really powerful in this decision to leave Notre Dame or stay. But yeah, like I said, I'm at Lehigh University now, doing pole vault and the heptathlon, and studying architecture. So things do work out, even though, and also it's okay to change. Like there's nothing wrong with going a different route, especially if it was your dream school and you don't have to stay somewhere just because it's your dream or your first choice.
Yeah, man, that's such a tough decision to make, especially because you're thinking to yourself, and as you were describing that, I was thinking to myself, what is your dream school? But you think, and you're like 5, 10 years old and like, grow up. And for me, it was like North Carolina. That was mine. For you, it was Notre Dame. And I think like to finally actually get there and achieve your goal and then not necessarily be happy or fully satisfied. And there's a lot of kind of competing opinions, pressures, coaches. That's got to be a really challenging time. I guess, how did you navigate that? Because the lessons that you were learning, I mean, not listening to others' opinions, it's way easier said than done. I think that it kind of sounds cliche, but and then it's easy to stay. I also very much agree with that and understanding that, it would be easy to stay. This is something I've always wanted. Leaving is going to be such a hard choice or hard thing to do. When I go to this new school, I'm going to have to, get around campus, like acclimate with the coaches, acclimate with the track, the new teammates and all that stuff. And so, yeah, it's a lot easier to stay, but I would have to put myself through all that change stress, right? That comes from that. How did you navigate that? Because I get the feeling that you're a very faith-based person. It was probably a faith-based orientation. You even talked about prayer and how you kind of overcame that. But I guess talk to me about that, the in-between times, right? Like the Tuesday to Wednesday thoughts of, should I stay? Should I go? Should I talk to my parents? And then when you talk to some people, they probably give you really good advice, but then you're thinking to yourself, is that good advice or is that what they want for me? I don't know. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think I honestly had days where I was like, no, I should stay, and days, no, I should leave. And I feel like it was like hard. Like I feel like I have to be honest, I'm pretty sure there were days where I was crying about it because like I really didn't know. And I still don't think you're gonna get like an intuition of this is a right decision or a wrong decision. You sort of just have to like go and make the decision, whether it's to stay or to leave. But for me, it was me being aware that if I stayed, I might always have this lingering thought in the back of my head, like, oh, what if? What if I left? What if I left Notre Dame? What if I transferred and went to another school? What would that be like? Where would I be now with athletics and architecture, um, heptathlon? And so I think just knowing that that lingering thought might be in the back of my head for like 5, 10 years, the rest of my life, I wasn't really willing to, have that. And I figured that like if I did leave and it was awful, uh, my coach was gonna let me back on the team if I wanted to come back. So just knowing that, and obviously not burning any bridges when I did leave Notre Dame was also very important. So I think just being aware of that like if you don't go out on a limb and make a decision, and just go for it, there's always going to be maybe that thought of like, what if? So that was one thing. And then another thing was I made sure to talk to people who didn't really have like weight, not necessarily weight, but like I didn't talk to my track coaches. I didn't talk to my parents. I made sure to talk to like a neutral person. And that was the priest on campus as well as my theology professor, because they probably like wanted me to stay, but they were sort of neutral in it. So I just like basically talked through my opinions and where I was coming from, and they were just an ear to listen and to also ask me good questions and to make sure I was thinking through things clearly. And they gave me some other insights, and they were also like faith based. So that was really important because they were asking good faith based questions, which is very important for me. And so that was another way that I sort of like dealt with this decision and not just me on my own. Just going and talking to other people.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, and just understanding that you went to very neutral places. Individuals like your coaches, obviously, there's probably a dual relationship there. Like one, they probably want you to stay. They recruited you. Number two, though, is that if they kind of have this inkling, maybe of you having thoughts about leaving or et cetera, that can maybe kind of create a not so great environment or relationship. So, and especially when you're trying to make an informed decision, to kind of leave some of the bias out of it. Same thing with parents. Even though sometimes, parents can be great, it just really depends on the relationship that you have with them, the thoughts that they may have. And I know my parents are heavily biased towards like one decision versus another. And they have this pressure as parents to want you to be happy, and that might not be the best to kind of take risk, right? Like parents are very risk averse people sometimes.
Yeah.
And I know that my parents are. I don't know about yours, but
Yeah.
in going into a theology professor and these individuals that are somewhat more neutral, it kind of makes an informed decision. And I like that, right? You're kind of thinking like, hey, what if, what if I did go, or, didn't. But I think another thing too is to not burn any bridges. That is just the best piece of advice. I think that some athletes, when they enter the transfer portal, they kind of don't say anything to the coach. It's very surprising to the coach. And then, they never talk to that individual. And then, that bridge is burned. But for coaches, a lot of these coaches, especially in the NCAA, they know each other, they talk, and kind of word gets out and around.
Yeah.
What is that process like, I guess, entering the transfer portal? Just for those of us that maybe don't know, and what was your experience like?
Yeah. So there's certain dates where you need to be entered by for your respective like sports season. And so I made sure that I entered on time by reaching out to my compliance officer and letting her know that I wanted to explore my options at other universities. And then I also made sure to talk to my coach about it before I did enter the transfer portal, just so he knew and wasn't surprised. Like you were mentioning, like it's not good to not keep them in the loop. So I made sure those things happened. And then I entered the transfer portal, and coaches will reach out to you through that. But I also reached out to other coaches and let them know, because some schools are more like looking in the portal a lot more than other schools. So coaches will reach out to you. You can reach out to other schools. And so that's what I did. And I was talking with a few schools. I would say more than a few, but there were a few that I was really, really interested in. And once you're in the portal, you can reach out to coaches and they can reach back out to you. But before you're in the portal, you can still reach out to coaches, but they can't respond to your emails or texts or anything like that. And you can't talk to them like face to face if you're on campus until you're in that portal. And so it's very important that you like follow the guidelines to enter on time and things like that. So it's very rigid, and I know there have been a few changes from when I was entering the transfer portal. But yeah, so I'm planning to run during graduate school because I was injured, so I'll have to go through that process again coming up here shortly. But yeah, I would say don't just sit back and wait for coaches to reach out to you. Just like you're in high school, be active in emailing coaches and calling coaches. And if they don't respond within a week or two, they're busy. So just send another email and they'll probably get back to you after a few emails.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So yeah, I guess follow the guidelines for sure. Don't do anything that you shouldn't do. But I also think it's really good advice, right? Reaching out to coaches and understanding that they're there to be a resource. Even though they don't email you back, it doesn't mean that they're not tracking you or at least aware. And so even if they can't email you back, still email them and be a little bit more proactive during that process. So it isn't like a recruiting, like sit back and we'll see. It could also be a very active process on the athlete's end. And I think that's really exciting. You said that you dealt with some injuries, and obviously, like fast forward now, you're at Lehigh, and we've talked before surrounding your injuries, but I just want to kind of understand what those injuries were, and I guess mentally, what were you going through when it came to those injuries? I have to commend you though. I am your mental coach. We've met a lot, and you did a very, very good job of mentally dealing with the past injury that you sustained, especially because it wasn't at an optimal moment in time. I know that's like a slight preview to my question, but I'll let you take it away. What were some of the injuries that you sustained from a mental process? What kept you going? Yeah, and how did you come back?
Yeah, so um, I was sort of pretty injury free going like growing up and throughout high school. And then I get to college and I don't know what happened, but my body decided it wanted to get injured and injured a lot. So when I went to Notre Dame, I got a concussion, broke my nose, uh, but it wasn't track related. But the concussion was pretty bad and it wasn't going away. So I had to sit out both indoor and outdoor track and field seasons at Notre Dame, unfortunately, because every time I tried to pole vault, like my head just felt like it was going to implode. And it just took a very, very long time. I would say it happened in November of 2022. I didn't get better until like June-ish. So however many months that is, like 6 or 7 months. So that was a very long time of being out competing. And that was my first experience of not training with the team, not going out and giving it my all every day because I needed to let my head just recover. And I was able, once it started getting a little bit better, I was able to train off land and do bike workouts, but I wasn't able to pole vault, and that was my event. So I obviously couldn't compete. That was the first big injury. And then I did the women's decathlon that summer in August, and I unfortunately fractured my back, L5, so very low back. And that's like technically supposed to recover within like a couple of weeks, but it took me again like 6 to 8 months to feel better. I believe it was an overuse thing, but during pole vault at the decathlon, it sort of just, that's when it like happened, I guess. So that was another thing. And that was my, like, coming from Notre Dame to Lehigh, I was like, okay, I'm ready to get back at it and just give it my all at this new university that I was attending. And so I was very excited. And then when I got hurt right before going back to college, that sort of put a damper on things mentally and physically. And since it was my back, I couldn't like walk or like do upper body stuff because it just affected everything. And so that's sort of when like my mental not like sanity, but just like I started getting upset, and just like fear started creeping in of like, am I ever going to get back to where I was? And my body also started changing. So for me mentally, like that, like my confidence that I had in myself sort of started going down as well, just because I wasn't able to stay physically fit while my back was recovering. Um, but through those two injuries, I knew that God had a plan for everything, as He does. And so just to continue to be aware of that, and just sort of think like, does He want me to get out of this? Like, why me? And like, what lesson can be learned from this? So just keeping like faith active during like this time was very important. And then I also um, tore my shoulder in the injuries just keep coming, unfortunately. But I was hurling and tore my shoulder this past March. And I just fell on my shoulder and tore my AC joint. But that's supposed to recover within a couple of weeks, like 4 to 6 weeks. It was grade 2. Supposed to like get better without surgery. But unfortunately, my joint like healed too loose, I guess. So my clavicle and my shoulder bone, like shoulder blade, the bones sort of like rub against each other and like move past each other because that joint isn't holding everything as tight as it's supposed to. And when that happens, it's really painful. So I don't just like praying I don't need surgery, but we're gonna see how the decathlon goes. And it's been getting a lot better with physical therapy, but that has been a lingering issue for about 6 months now, and most people feel completely better within a couple of weeks. So, and then I also have like chronic shin splints, chronic heel bruise, and so like minor things, but really knowing that God has a plan for everything, and like there's something far greater than me in sport. And so even though I'm having these injuries, He has a far greater plan for me than just me being an athlete. But I do think that the major thing I learned from these injuries was that God was sort of holding me out from athletics because this is like me and just what I think, but He was holding me out of athletics because He knew that like competing collegiately was gonna tear me down mentally because I was putting so much pressure and on myself and so much fear and anxiety involving athletics and competing, that if I like wasn't aware and wasn't able to build my mental fitness like way back when I was a freshman and a sophomore, like that could have just been really bad for me mentally. And so I think maybe He was just holding me out until I could be mentally mature enough to compete and realize that I'm more than my sport. So I do think there are ups that came out of these injuries. And I definitely was able to also mentally realize that I'm going to try to be stronger in the end and come back better than I was. And I do think I was pretty successful in doing that. So yeah, that's my story of injuries and setbacks.
That is incredible from a lot of standpoints. I think that like one of them is the fact that it seems like all three of these major injuries, you got the prognosis and then it was longer, right? Like it was like
Yeah,
4 to 6 weeks, and then
right.
like it's like 6 months later. And I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, if someone told me that I was going to get a concussion or what have you, and that it was 4 to 6 weeks, and then it takes 7 months, I would be so frustrated. Like I would be very angry.
Yeah.
And I don't like you're talking about the faith-based approach, and I really love this because I think that a lot of athletes need to have a North Star, or a I think it's whether it's a religious practice or whether it is some sort of belief in some sort of higher power. I think that we need to. A lot of athletes can benefit from having a lot of these beliefs. I myself am a Christian. I know that I think that you are as well. But even if you're not, just listening to this, having some sort of belief in something bigger than yourself, beyond yourself, whether it's the universe, God, Gandhi, whomever, I think that's very powerful. And so I could tell that it got you through some of this adversity. But I have to go back, like when you weren't getting better, when 6 months turned to 7 weeks to 8 weeks to all this stuff, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I would say it was a lot of frustration, I'm gonna be honest. Frustration, sadness, questioning, like, are the doctors wrong? Is the diagnosis wrong? Is it right? And my body just doesn't recover as fast as other people's. So I wasn't really sure. And I feel like that led to a lot of distrust in like doctors, just because they told me one thing and 3 times it was wrong, something else. And that might not be like a fault on their end. It might just be like me and my body. But so that was an outcome of that. Um, but really, honestly, just like talking with people and just making sure not to isolate myself, because not being able to practice and compete can be very isolating. So making sure I was talking to my family and talking to my friends just about what's going on, and also praying, of course, um, really helped me through that, as well as knowing that I'm gonna get better at some point. I would say there were days where I was like, "Am I gonna get better?" Like, it's been, like, 6 more months than it was supposed to be. Um, but definitely just knowing that God doesn't abandon me, and He doesn't abandon anybody, and so just putting my faith and trust in Him and knowing that He's got me, and whatever, even if I don't get better, that's God's plan, and He can turn something bad, into something good. So, just really being aware of that helped me through that.
Yeah. Yeah, and understanding that you kind of maybe double down on your faith. And I guess, how did your faith grow and mature in this experience? And then, being healthy to then being injured again to like being healthy again. And you're saying that, like, hey, maybe there was a purpose in this. Maybe I just mentally wasn't ready to be able to compete. And maybe there were like signs there. But I guess, because what role did faith play in your sport and in your life, especially during injuries, but even beyond?
Yeah, I think it's like something to fall forward on. I feel like a lot of people say like fall back on, but I really feel like it should be something to fall forward on, because like it helps me see where I'm going and be aware of the present, the future, and it also helps me not dwell on the past. But I think within sport, my faith has grown in that um, I compete not for myself as I was in high school and the beginning of college, but I've learned not to compete so much as for myself and my family, and fans, but for God and to give Him that glory, because He can take away my ability to compete and practice as quickly as He can give it back to me. And so, just being aware of that, so I learned to compete for God and give Him the glory and talk about Him as much as I can. And track and field gives me that platform to do that, um, and to reach people just like this. And so just doing that, I've learned, and to be more comfortable, especially being open about my faith. And then just from day to day and not like track and field related, just knowing that um, like he is involved in every little part of my life and other people's lives, and sort of just being more aware of that and giving the Lord more of my time, and being less selfish and more selfless with my time and giving more of that to God, because He's been so good to me, and for me to just give Him the bare minimum of my time does not seem fair. And so for me, just trying my best to do better at that has really been where I've just grown in my day to day.
I love that. Just the not competing for yourself and competing for his glory, um, and not being super. Not that you are, but I think that some athletes are egotistical, self-absorbed,
Yeah.
saying like, "Oh, I'm putting so much emphasis on the outcome, and oh, I got second place, or I didn't hit this mark or that mark," and that's like a negative reflection on me. But understanding that, hey, I'm not competing for the trophies, I'm not competing for the
Mhm.
fame. Maybe just to outdo myself, but it's really to give all glory to God and understand that you have a platform in which to do so,
Yeah.
and being more comfortable with that I think is extremely important. So yeah, I love that you said that.
Thanks.
That's awesome. Um, I guess how have you when you make time for your prayer, for your family, for your friends?
Mhm.
I don't know how do you juggle that because I know track and you're not even just doing one particular event like pole vault. You're doing like a ton. Like what is
Yeah.
it? The heptathlon means 10, right? Is it 10
The
events?
heptathlon is 7, the decathlon
7.
is 10.
That's what it is. Okay, yeah, so the HEPA 7, DCAT's 10. Are you more privy towards the DCAT? You like the 10 or more so 7?
I like the decathlon. That's definitely more
Okay.
my thing. Just because of my like mid-distance background, I'm better at like the longer distance events, as well as pole vault is incorporated into the decathlon and it's not in the heptathlon. So to be able to do that within
Yeah.
that competition is definitely suited more towards me. And I would say the decathlon is more like endurance based, whereas the heptathlon is more like speed and power specific. So
Yeah. During the decathlon, I'm curious for individuals that don't know, you can kind of list maybe the events, but what are some of the how do you be mentally strong? What are some of the mental techniques? How is it different from, I don't know, even like a sport like basketball or something like that? Like, what are some of the mental intricacies of going from
mm,
I don't know, a running event to a field event? Like, what sort of strategies do you have in place? How do we have to think mentally, I guess, surrounding approaching the decathlon?
yeah. So yeah, to give background, the decathlon is 10 events within 2 days, 5 events on the first day, 5 events on the second day. Um It's a mix between sprints, jumps, throws, a little bit of distance. And so your mind really has to adapt from one event to the next. One event's a sprint, then right after that, you go throw, and then right after that, you go jump, and right after that, you run a distance event. So to be able to shift your mind um, can be difficult, but you sort of have to actively go about that. And so for me, that's like journaling, reading notes of what cues I have been practicing during practice before I go and warm up for that next event. And so to get my mind actively into the aware of like what I'm about to do, because the event that I just did previously is something completely different. So really shifting my mindset, visualization, and just reading notes is one thing. And then whenever this is like hits close to home for me because when I was stuck in those fear cycles and anxiety cycles, especially when an event didn't go my way, I would sort of break down and just get emotionally stuck um, and sort of just dwell in the past. And I couldn't break out of that and I couldn't allow myself to focus on that next event. So that really plagued me for a very long time. Um, but I would say being able to put that event that you just did behind you and think forward for that next event is really powerful and very helpful. So if one event doesn't go my way, I'm like, it's over. There's nothing I can do about it now. And then I shift my focus to that next event. And that's in the decathlon, especially, that's like extremely important to not dwell on the past. So for me to be able to learn that and break out of those fear cycles and realize that even though that didn't go well, that doesn't mean the rest of the events are going to go well. And what I was missing before was whenever I did dwell on the past and whenever I was stuck in that fear cycle, that was affecting all the events in the future that hadn't happened yet. So I was really doing a disservice to myself, and that was negatively impacting me, even though I didn't want it to, and that wasn't my goal. But being able to put those events in the past is really a powerful tool to be able to learn and do that, especially during the competition.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many things that athletes can learn from is to really have a short-term memory. A lot of athletes talk about what that means to have a short-term memory, and that is like making a mistake, not dwelling on the past. But I think in particular for the decathlon, that could be easier said than done, or for any athlete really to be easier said than done, because there's some big
Right.
mistakes that coach then yells at you. But for you, it's kind of this. Let's take, I don't know, long jump, for example, right? You have 3, is it 3 jumps, 4 jumps?
Yeah, 3.
3
Yeah.
jumps. You have to hit your mark. You may be coming from another event. Maybe it's the first event of the day. So it's like, how does that then set the tone for confidence for your other events? That can be mightily challenging. And not to bury the lead here, but this is something that me and you worked on quite a bit. I think this is when you kind of sought myself or Trevor out as mental coaches to be able to help you put less pressure on yourself, to not necessarily dwell on the past, to really think and maintain your level of confidence
Mhm.
throughout the 2-day event. And again, easier said than done. Uh, but I want to ask you, what was it like even um, working with myself, working with Trevor, but one noticing that like, hey, yes, I do have this thing that I really need to work on and understand a little bit more about. But man, this is really holding me back. What was the journey like for you and working with me? I mean, I think a lot of times when we talk about sports psychology, we talk about it from a high level, like, oh, attention, confidence, and like all this stuff. And maybe myself or Trevor will talk, or maybe another sports psych will talk about this. But I think rarely I've heard a podcast where we kind of get the insides of like session by session.
Mhm.
What was it like to work with a coach? And so now I have one of my athletes on. I want you to just, and you could tell me if something wasn't good or something wasn't right, or like what that experience was like. But yeah, I don't know, what was that experience like. What was our first conversation like, and then even into the fourth session and to the last session.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, what was that journey like for you?
Yeah. I think it was, I really liked it, and it was very helpful for me, especially in those beginning sessions when you were getting to know me. I was really telling you my story, and telling you what I struggle with, so being open and vulnerable is very important. But I liked sort of being able to put what was going on in my head into words and really be able to, like, explicitly say that, because that was probably as helpful for me as it was for you. So I really did like that. And then once you were able to sort of develop, a plan for me based on what I was telling you, we got sort of into, like, the science behind certain things. I really like learning, and learning about science and psychology. I've taken a few classes in college, and I like psychology classes. So, Dave put together PowerPoints for me about, putting what was going on in my head, sort of like just telling me that it's not, like something that's wrong with me. Like there's science-backed evidence, um, involving like what's happening in my head. So I really liked learning about that, and that sort of like, sort of opened my eyes, in knowing that it's not like a me problem. Um, and so that was very helpful. And then, Dave also just gave me, techniques from session to session of things I can focus on to really help me break out of certain things. So, like fear, for example, negative body image or self talk, things like that. Um, and just knowing that, like, knowing the science behind it and then being able to go out and practice something to help me, like, become mentally fit, was very helpful, and I liked that. So, for example, um, for me, like, one thing I did was, went to the track where I am, like, vulnerable, in those, like, states where I, like, get very anxiety, ridden and fearful, and I rehearsed Bible verses in my mind to just be able to, um so I can develop, like, a habit when I get to the competition and I'm in that same environment, and fear creeps in and sadness creeps in, um, it, like, comes up in my head, pretty habitually because I was practicing it, these Bible verses that ground me, and break me out of that cycle that I was about to get myself into. So being able to put into practice what we were learning was very crucial and very helpful for me as well. So yeah, I would say being able to like express what I was feeling in my head verbally, putting things into practice and learning the science behind it and the psychology behind it were the main things I would say from session to session.
Yeah, Corinne is an amazing athlete, but also an amazing student. And during some of our first couple of sessions, I think, and this isn't just you, a lot of athletes that meet with myself and Trevor also start to think about this. They're like, okay, just tell me what to do. Right? Is there, do I do this? Do I do that? Like,
Yeah.
how does self talk work? How does imagery work? And I, so at times, that is the answer, but at times it's not. At times I need to get to know you and get to know what your thoughts are. And part of that is for me to hear you and fully understand you. But to your point, part of that is actually for you to reflexively think for yourself
Hmm.
and not second guess yourself, but check in and make sure, hey, is this really what I'm feeling? How does that make me feel or impact me physically? How does that link to previous experiences that I've had? And to really like rationalize with some cognitive behavioral therapy mixed within some acceptance and commitment therapy,
Hmm.
which we've definitely talked about. But you were definitely a student and you were like, well, what is acceptance and commitment therapy? Like, what is the
Yeah.
prefrontal cortex and what is it responsible for? So I think that that's one of the things that I tried to give you both, right? Where I was like,
Right.
man, Corinne is a very demanding athlete. I love this, right? I want to rise to this challenge. I want to give her all of the tools and all the tricks. Um, and I also just want to talk. So I think for the first 30 minutes, we were just talking, right? How's practice? How's family life? How's home? Tell me about this, and that. And really, truly, what is your mind going through? Just being very comfortable. And then the last 30 minutes of our session was, okay, this is a skill that I think is going to help you. How can we implement that? And I remember one of the first homeworks that I gave you, which was that list of, because you're a very faith-based person. And I was like, okay, we're going to mix self-talk with faith
Hmm.
through Bible verses and biblical verses. I
Yep.
think you really liked that homework. Talk to me about what that assignment was for you, and maybe talk to me about your Bible verse that you then chose to kind of really hammer in this habitual nature of
Hmm.
your self-talk when you're getting frustrated, etc. What was that? Do you still know what it is? I mean, I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. So the I listed out my core values, as well as like fears and anxieties that I was experiencing. And I believe it was either for each of the fears or each of like my core values, I listed a few Bible verses per like whichever it was. Um, and I really liked that because I was able to pair one thing with a Bible verse. So sort of was very grounding for me. And then one of the Bible verses that I picked was, let's see, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, um, for for the power of Christ rests upon me, or something very similar to that. And so I
Second
think,
Second Corinthians 12:9-10, I think.
yeah, yeah. So that specifically is saying that I have weaknesses. Everybody inherently has weaknesses. I fail. I have shortcomings. But knowing that God's grace is more powerful than anything um, is very reassuring for me. And I can boast of my weaknesses just as much as I can boast of my um, accolades and things that go well. So just being aware of that, just because I fall short doesn't mean I have to be upset. Doesn't mean I have to like self-pity. Um, and so that was very eye-opening for me, that Bible verse specifically. Um, but just to be able to ground myself in the Bible and it might not be the Bible specifically for one person or another person. It might be something else. But just something to ground you and a higher power that is not within myself, but something greater than one person, I think is just something very important, whether that's the Bible or not.
100%. And I remember when you sent me that back, and for clarification purposes, yes, it was your values. We talked about what
Okay.
those were, and then talked about your fears, and then we linked the Bible verses to the fears, and then obviously your values are kind of this overarching thing that which we should be cognizant of, and which individuals rarely are in surrounding their beliefs. But that was one of the most powerful for me, in full transparency, as a coach. We get a lot out of this too. You think the athletes get the most out of this. I got so much out of that conversation. Just even like the eight, or many sessions with you, Corinne, just surrounding that. And I remember I had this idea, but I wanted to run it by you. And you're like, yeah, I think that makes sense. I do want to do that. And that was that. I think I had you go outside and walk around the track a couple of times because you were injured at the time too. So it was, you weren't actively training physically. There were some things that were done there, but it was like primarily recovery. You would show up to some practices, observe, but there's only so much that you could do. So
Yeah.
you would walk around the track and you would think about, in particular, you said, I think it was maybe a transition from, I forget which actual events they were, but that transition period from maybe
Mhm.
that failure or missing the mark, right? I mean, it's not a complete failure. You put a mark down, but it wasn't your best, right? In
Yeah.
long jump, whatever it is.
Hmm.
Actually, what is that mark? What's your PR in long jump?
17 feet 8 inches. So I
17
think maybe around like 5.4 meters ish.
meters. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I can't jump that far. So if you maybe, I don't know, 4 meters, 4.9, right? Meters, let's say, and you're like,
Yeah.
kind of dwelling on that. Didn't
Yeah.
perform my best. I would have you picture that in your mind and then repeat that Bible verse to yourself as you walked around the track. That was something that we agreed upon as a really like practical thing to do. So this isn't just like, I can't call it therapy. It's not even talk therapy or anything like that. It's a very active process that we engage in with the athletes, and
Mhm.
I'm glad that you did that. And I don't know. I want to hear from you. What was that experience like? Did you think that was powerful? Did you think that like there was? And we even kind of came back together and chatted about how it went. But yeah, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I think in the beginning I was maybe a little bit skeptical of how it was gonna work, and what I was gonna get out of it. But I think doing it over and over and over again, I was able to really see that the Bible verse was able to more habitually come up and come into my head. And so, knowing that I was building a habit, whereas before I feel like the fear would be the natural thing to come up, whereas as I was walking around the track and saying this Bible verse in my head over and over again, um, I knew that whenever something didn't go my way, I was gonna be able to sort of put a little more space between, like we talked about this, like the stimulus and the response. And so these Bible verses that I was rehearsing, that's what's gonna break up like the time between like the bad event and then my natural like inkling, an inclination of like the fear and the anxiety and the sadness that would come up. So just sort of breaking that apart, and then what's then going to come up is this Bible verse. And so I think as I continued to walk around the track day after day, I was less skeptical and more sort of, I would say like not like rewarding, but I knew it was going to be rewarding, um, as I continued that, because I knew that I was currently like through that process breaking free of the fear that would naturally have occurred otherwise.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that, and thank you for being open to the process, right? I think that sometimes it can seem silly. Even when I hear myself like think and talk about it at the first part, I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna seem silly. I think I may even have said that to you. This may seem silly, but I have an
Yeah.
idea. And you're like, okay, but just the openness to try it out and to understand. And one of the things that you talked about, which is what we talked about in our sessions, is this gap between the stimulus and the response. The stimulus is you are, I'm just using long jump as an example, hit the board, jump, get your mark. right? The referee then yells out your mark of whatever it is. Again, I'm just going off the cuff. Let's say it's 4.9 meters.
Yeah.
What is your first heat of the moment thought? Right? Like, oh, I could have done this better. Man, that mark sucks. Or
Yeah.
whatever those thoughts are. And I think that during some of our sessions, we just gathered what those were and really attaching the emotions to it. You said this multiple times. It's regret, frustration. And I think you used the term sadness, right? As like one of those
Yeah.
emotions that you were feeling as well. And it's important to reflect on them because oftentimes they come so reflexively that we don't necessarily know where they come from and we don't know if they're advantageous to our performance or not.
Mhm.
And sometimes, and you thought this as well, a lot of other athletes thought this, I thought this. It's like, well, I should be hard on myself. Duh. If I'm not, then who else is going to be hard on me? Or
Yeah.
that's going to push me to reach a new level.
Yeah.
And you were like, you know what? Maybe I could be a little bit nicer to myself,
Mhm.
but also understand that fear or that anxiety of, I'm not going to, get first place or second, or I'm not going to, win another, I don't know, All American title or what have you. Those fears kind of start to creep in, and to undo that was really to just ground it in your faith, which I thought was going to be the most powerful thing for you, and it definitely was. So yeah, I commend you for doing that. Yeah, and then talking about your experience and really just being open and leaning in.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for making that, up and giving me the opportunity to do it because I think it was very helpful in the end.
Yeah, 100%. Look, you are human. We all are. I think that I have struggles still. What are some gaps? Like, what do you still struggle with? Is there anything that you, from a maybe mental, even physical standpoint, are still thinking about training on currently?
Mhm. Yeah, I would say, the main thing is just my future. Like, I feel like everybody, not just me, is uncertain of their futures, and, I think I've been recently pretty fearful of, like, what's to come and just the unknowns and the uncertainties, but, like, where am I gonna go to grad school? Am I gonna do track in grad school? What's my job gonna look like? How is, like, post-collegiate training for track gonna look? Um, so I think I have a lot of things that I'm currently thinking about and going on in my head, um, and I think that leads to a lot of thinking, and maybe too much at times because I can't control, most of what's gonna happen in my life. So that, like, uncertainty has led to a lot of fear and questioning, um, which is obviously not good. And like I've mentioned before, for me, I can ground myself in my faith and prayer, knowing that God is the writer of my story, ultimately not me. So just being aware that I can want something for my future, but if it's not in God's will and it's not his plan, then it's not going to happen. And just being okay and learning to be okay with um, if something that I want doesn't occur for me, just being okay with that and moving on and realizing that God's plan is far greater than my own. And one of the Bible verses says, like, lean not on your own understanding, but in all thy ways acknowledge God's like will, and He will direct your path. So just being aware of that and knowing that He's the writer of my story, and He holds my life in His hand. That's what grounds me. So yeah, I just struggle with the fear of my future and all those uncertainties, as I'm sure many people do.
Everyone does. I do as well. But again, I appreciate you being humble. This is one of the reasons that you're an ambassador, right? Is that we all still have our work to do. We all still have our work cut out for us, and none of us are perfect. I think from a mental standpoint, but just seeing the growth and maturity in yourself, going from where you were previously, which is a high performing individual, to an individual who's dealing with some of these fears, anxieties, frustrations, injuries that have kind of come up for you, and then saying, "Look, I think I need some help. I need some support," and then really embracing it and being super open to what that process was like, and even now, just to be humble and say, "Yeah, there's still fears that come up," but
Yeah.
grounding yourself in your faith, understanding that your steps are ordered, and then on the back end of that, you said something that was like slightly super profound, which is again, that's easier said than done. And part of that is being okay with letting go and understanding that, well, if this is truly my faith in the Lord's will for me, having my steps ordered in this way, then how dare I be disappointed with the outcome or dwell on the outcome? And I think again, it's easier to say that, hey, I accept the way things are to someone. And then it's hard to say, I don't know, in those moments, those thoughts keep popping up. Well, I don't know, traffic wouldn't be nearly as hard if I didn't live in Los Angeles. And, that job that I applied to, God's plan was for me to go to Colorado. That's what I thought it was, but it wasn't. Now I'm in LA and I'm stuck in traffic, right? I don't
Yeah.
know, day to day, it's like kind of creeps up and comes into our mind. So it's like having that acceptance, again, it's easier said than done, but it is a daily, almost spiritual warfare that
Mm.
kind of comes up. Where it's, hey, if those thoughts enter my mind, it's saying, no, this is the plan, and I'm going to see it through. And that's one of those things I think is very important, and that you model and that you walk the walk and talk the talk. So I love that.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also like to think that something I say a lot is God works everything for the good of those who love him. And so I, as a Christian, love God. And so if something doesn't go as planned, like if the devil attacks me in a certain way, God can work that and turn that around for my good, even if it wasn't his plan ultimately. So like maybe all these injuries got actually turned for my good. And so just being aware that if something bad in my life does happen, it's probably not God, because nothing bad comes from God. But he can turn that around for my good, and just being aware of that and cognizant of that is very helpful for me. And then also, yeah, like you were saying, just being okay with a shift in the plan or path. Yeah, just being okay with that, and then just really leaning into that if there's like a turn in the road, leaning into that, and then just making that my next journey.
Yeah, and man, that change is easier navigated with that deeply rooted faith in that higher power, and also your support system as well, right? Friends,
Yeah.
family, and you always know that you could call me. But even that support system too is nothing without that faith. And so understanding that, navigating, and we're so happy to have you here, like at the Focus 5 app, and you're actually in the app, featured in the app. So those of you that don't know, and I could put a link to our app in the bio, but Corinn is an ambassador for us here at Focus 5, here at Hearts and Minds, for sports psych and sports psychology. She created an audio course, which is 10 days worth of her course, in which she talks about her journey. There's a lot more learnings in there. There's also a lot of science, because I know that you like that.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of science surrounding cognitive behavioral therapy, as well as self-talk, imagery, overcoming some of the adversity. So I think it's a really nice balance between that, telling your story with the science, and then understanding that there's a workbook, which I think is extremely important, that athletes can then engage with, write down, and journal. You said that was one of the things in which you do often, which is very reflective practice for you, understanding where your thoughts are, jotting down some of your goals. You could do that with Corinn's course in our Focus 5 app. But I want to throw it over to you for any feedback, thoughts. Like, what could people expect when
Yeah.
they listen to your course?
Yeah. Definitely more. So I talked about my story a little bit, but just gaining more insight into that, into my life, into some of the setbacks and shortcomings that have happened to me, as well as some of the accomplishments that I've had throughout my life. So just getting to know me and learn about me and my life a little bit more through that course, as well as some of the like mental aspects, stuff that goes on in my head. You can learn about that, and then science and psychology facts that back the mental fitness training that I've been working on. So you can get an insight into my sessions with Dave through my recordings and sessions on the app. And so it'll be like you were there with me and Dave, like whenever we did our sessions. So yeah, and then just a little reflective questions at the end of each session, just for you to think and journal as well on what you heard me talk about, and just really you can relate that to yourself and how that relates to your life and anything that you're experiencing.
Yeah, I love that. Even like listening to some of the episodes, I was blown away by some of the things that we were saying, or that you were saying in there, spoken in your own voice, and it's powerful. I think it's I know a lot of these stories, but I mean, even still, I think it was very well done from like an emotional standpoint, and that's what we want. We want individuals to feel it, and we also creating a community as well. So Corinne is in the app, and you can DM her, which is unheard of, right? Like, and kind of talk to any of our mental coaches also, but even talking to an individual that's a 13-time All-American. I mean, I don't know how many times in my life, or even young athletes have had access to individuals such as this. So we're really wanting to create a community here. So whether you're in college or high school or up and coming, or you just want to talk about what your favorite event in the DCAT is, and how you do it, then message Corinne in our app. Also, I think that's awesome. Actually, answer that question. What is your favorite event in the DCAT?
My favorite event, honestly, this is definitely an unpopular opinion, but probably the 1500 meter. It's the last event, grueling event. Most people hate it. Most people dread it for the 9 events previous. But I think it's like a hard event. How bad do you want it? Sort of thing. Yeah, it's the last event, so just give it your all. And also, so that's one aspect that I like. And then, like I mentioned, I have a little bit of like a distance, mid distance background. So I do sort of excel in that event. So to be able to get a lot of points from that event and move up some places in the last event is also pretty fun for me. So I think that's my favorite, as well as pole vault. I just think pole vault's very fun. I've been doing it for a very long time, and to also excel in that event is very fun. And pole vault's just a very fun event in general to just, well, sorry, just to like fling yourself up over a bar and then just trust that you're gonna land on the mat. Yeah, it's a lot of faith and trust.
It's a lot of faith and trust. It's yeah, and coaching some individuals through pole vault, it's one of those things that you have to take piece by piece, and then you do have to fully commit. Which, back to your gymnastics background, I mean, it has to be something that you've learned early on, so it's a little bit easier for you. But for some of us, myself, is what I'm referring to. It can be quite difficult to say, okay, yeah, you have to lean back all the way back, trust the pole, trust where your mark is, um, and then find the bar, right, and then get over it. I mean, that's yeah. But man, the 1500, it does take some sort of a mental strength or an individual to look at that after 9 events across 2 days, and then to run 100 meters short of a mile, uh, is pretty intense. But you could tell that the finish line is literally, right there.
Yeah.
For the past 2 days, you just really got to throw this mark down. Yeah, for those of you that don't know Corinne, and please get into the app and listen to her story. She's a very motivated person, almost loving of the pain. This individual is Corinne, and it takes a really special individual to really embrace that, like, pain. I mean, that's like a mental challenge. Have you always liked that? Like, you love practice. You like I've talked to you about practice. You love practicing. You love competing. Is that something that's innate, or do you think that we could teach people that?
Um, you definitely that's definitely a teachable trait, to really embrace practice and pain and realize that each time you practice, each time you step your foot on the track or the court, the field, whatever, you're getting better. Whether that be a poor practice or a very great practice, you're still having the opportunity to practice and you're still getting better. Um, but I think for me, it was pretty innate, just starting so young. And I wasn't really, when I was very young, wasn't really thinking so much about the pain as just it was me having fun. Um, During practice, even though it probably was painful back then as it is now. But I think just doing it for so long, just realizing that pain is going to probably occur whether you give it your all or you don't give it your all. It's still going to be painful. So why not just give it your all in practice, in competition? So yeah, I think being aware of that, but it definitely is a teachable skill if someone's not used to like running through pain or running hard enough to experience the pain. Yeah, it's definitely something to work on, and it's just yeah, you're able to grow through that.
I love that. Yeah, it's like, is it gonna be, yeah, fear or fun?
Yeah, and it's
And
yeah, I was just gonna say it's definitely just as mental as it is physical. Just being willing to know you're gonna experience pain and be okay with that. The 1500 is yeah, definitely mentally challenging just as it is physically.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, and having that rooted in fun, fun of the competition, fun of the, not necessarily the result, but even just like in pushing yourself, or like knowing that there is some sort of dopamine, as I like to say, or satisfaction in knowing that you tried your hardest, that you not only tried your hardest during the competition, but also practiced
Hmm.
to the fullest extent that you could. Um, and if you know that you did that, and if you know that you competed as best as you could, then there is some sort of satisfaction with, no matter where you ended up, that, I did my best
Right.
and that was the best that I could do. Did I want to do better? Probably. Sure. But at the same time, like, this is what I put out here on the track, on the field. These are the marks that I hit. And I know that I showed up for practice every single day to do
Yeah.
what I could do.
Yeah. Yeah. Similarly, with my decision to transfer or not, like what would go on in the back of my head, like what if I left or what if I left Notre Dame? How would that be? Um, Same thing goes on in my head, like during competition. What if I gave it my all? What if I tried just a little bit harder? What would have happened then? Would I have gotten a new PR? Would I have burnt myself out too quickly? But just not wanting to experience that what if and that questioning um, definitely like prompts me to just give it my all no matter what. And then I will be okay, like you were saying, with whatever outcome that is.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's like, I have this what if, and you're thinking, well, if I don't want to experience that, maybe I could put in more of the effort in these domains so I can sleep at night, right, for lack of a better
Yeah.
term, and just say, like, hey, I did all the things that I could do. And now it is in God's hands. And that is an easier way to accept things, is if you know that you did that, personally. So as we kind of wrap up here, I do have a couple of last questions. Um, First of all, it would be, I guess, if you were to give not advice to your younger self, because I know that individuals tend to do that, but if there was, and there are younger athletes listening to this out here, what would be some advice that you would give them? I guess from a mental standpoint, or just advice generally that you have, for young athletes and individuals that are kind of looking up to you, looking at, maybe, hey, maybe I'm experiencing a little bit of fear, anxiety, lack of confidence, so maybe even identity issues
Mhm.
where I don't know who I am, or if my parents are putting too much pressure on me, or if I just need to fit in. What are some thoughts that you have that you could leave, the younger generation with?
Yeah, I would say confidence is definitely something that's gonna like enhance your performance and your practice, your competition. But I would say just being aware that even if you aren't confident, you can still do amazing things. You can still go out and surprise yourself. So take that confidence as something that's going to enhance your performance. But even if you aren't confident, like even if you know your opponent is um, going to be challenging and is very talented, and maybe you aren't confident, just know that you can still go out and perform at your best, perform you the best you've ever done. So just being aware of that, just because you aren't confident completely doesn't mean you can't perform well. Just knowing that, and even just knowing that, that can just inherently just boost your confidence. Um, yeah, so that's like a positive feedback loop. I think that's what it is. Um, but that, and then also just being aware that I mentioned this earlier, but you're the one who's living your life. So if you are in a sport and you're losing the love for it, and you take a break and that love isn't coming back, don't be afraid to pivot and maybe try another sport. Or if that's not a sport, whether that's um, like singing or drawing or just another passion, just don't be afraid to pivot and change And also don't be don't take other people's opinions into account too much, overriding your own opinion, because your own opinion should be the strongest one. And I would also say, if you are losing the fun in something, don't be afraid to step back, because I experienced that, where I was losing the fun in the sport, but I didn't take a step back, and that sort of led to a lot of challenges mentally, and just my performance started to just steady, and I wasn't getting any better in the sport. So just be aware of how you are feeling during practice, during competition. If you're waking up and dreading practice, just take that as a sign to maybe step back and build that love again for the sport. And yeah, I would say those are like the main things that I have.
I love that. Athletes listening out there, definitely replay that and put a mark on it. Take a screenshot on your phone. I think it's super solid advice to really be yourself and listen to your own opinions versus others, right? I mean, man, especially when I was younger, I was like, I should probably do this because X, Y, and Z person wants me to, or what have you. Man, that's solid advice. All right, you ready for the lightning round?
Yeah.
Nice. All right, lightning round. So I'm gonna ask you 3 questions. Number 1 is, what's your favorite food?
My favorite food is grilled chicken salad. I like the protein and I just like the vegetables.
Grilled chicken salad. Oh, I love that. Nice. That sounds great. Question number 2: when you're frustrated, what do you do?
When I'm frustrated, what do I do? I would say I take deep breaths. I definitely try to think through things before I react or talk verbally. And then I also go to the Lord and I pray and I ask the Lord for his guidance. Yeah.
Nice. Love that. Yeah. I like that reflexively. Okay, so last question. What's an underestimated part of your routine?
Um, Part of my daily routine, I would say, I don't know if this is underrated, but it might be overlooked. I would say just getting a good breakfast in, because I feel like that fuels the rest of my day. Athletically, I would say uh, maybe just mentally preparing, uh, and taking a break, especially in college, between your academics and your practice. Whether that's just 5 minutes of silence, 5 minutes of deep breathing, 5 minutes of just closed eyes, just to separate my academics from my athletic training.
Ooh, I like that. That's actually one that I have not heard on this podcast before. And one thing that I used to do, or just, I guess, have a little bit more awareness of, I'm so glad that you brought that up, which is just kind of create space before you transition into another thing. Uh, yeah, I love that. Wow. Amazing. Thank you, Corinne. I appreciate this. This is an awesome podcast. I hope that individuals took a lot from this, have learned a little bit more about you, your journey in athletics, and also your journey in sports psychology. And we're really happy and fired up to have you as an ambassador here at the Focus 5 app. Is there any last words or anything that you have for the people out there?
I would say thank you for listening and thank you for learning a little bit about me. I love sharing my story and my faith. And I hope that you got something out of this. And just as much as I love sharing about me, I would love to learn about you. So take advantage of that DM feature in that Focus 5 app. And I look forward to connecting with you.
Love that. Good luck this weekend. I
Thank
know that
you.
you're going to crush it. And even if you don't, my grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness.
Yes. Yes. It's amazing to just be grounded in my faith and whatever that is for you. So thank you so much for having me. And I love talking with you.
Yeah, thank you, Corinne. To those out there, I will put the features of the Focus 5 app in the description of this podcast, whether you listen to it on Spotify, YouTube, etc. I'll also give Corinne's social media handles and profiles and stuff like that. So you can click those and reach out to her if you have any questions or anything like that. And please feel free to share the podcast wherever you find it. But yeah, thank you, Corinne. This has been awesome, and we'll see you next time.
Amazing. Thank you.